Thank you for joining us on Health Diary. My name is Gladys Gashanja, and today we're coming to you from the brand new outlet of Good Life Pharmacy here at Sarit Center at the New Wing. Now, the conversation today is about diabetes. I mean, with 20% of deaths attributed to diabetes, it's about time we had this conversation again. And of course, the International Diabetes Federation actually ranked Kenya to have 458,000 people living with diabetes. That was a research done in 2017, but with the drastic change of lifestyle and bad habits with time, that number has surely increased. So today we have a conversation on how to stop these soaring numbers. But before we get to it, here now is the fact of the matter. Diabetes mellitus refers to a group of diseases that affect how your body uses blood sugar. The underlying cause of diabetes varies by type, but no matter what type of diabetes you have, it can lead to excess sugar in your blood. Diabetes symptoms may vary depending on how much your blood sugar is elevated. For some, especially those with pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, may not experience symptoms initially. However, in type 1 diabetes, symptoms tend to come on quickly and be more severe. Long-term complications of diabetes develop gradually, and the longer you have diabetes and the less controlled your blood sugar, the higher the risk of complications. Well, with the prevalence of diabetes increasing by the day in Kenya, it definitely is time for us to have this conversation yet again, to just do a bit of follow-up, because it seems with the changes of lifestyle and of course people eating badly, there are more and more numbers walking into those doors or through the doors of diabetologists. And speaking of which, I have one on set with me, Dr. Salwa Shafbal. This is the second time we're sitting down. She is a diabetologist from the Diabetes Management Center. Thank you for your time. And I thought this time round, let's talk about the easy way to manage this condition. But before we get to it, just give us a refresher course about the different types of diabetes.
Two types of diabetes. You have type 1 and type 2. And then you have other types of diabetes, which I call hybrid diabetes, things like MODY and LADA, but you know, there's no need to get into details of that, academia.
Yeah.
So, and then your third large category is gestational diabetes mellitus, where, you know, a patient who didn't have diabetes then gets diabetes while pregnant. So type 1 diabetes is the type of diabetes that mostly occurs in the younger population, and it's an autoimmune condition. Meaning, so far there's still no known cause. There's no genetic predisposition, like your family history does not matter when it comes to type 1 diabetes as opposed to type 2 diabetes. They're much younger, they're leaner patients, so you'll find this is what people call thin patients, okay? So they're much leaner patients. And the minute you diagnose a patient with type 1 diabetes, for example, one of my patients is 8-year-old, another one is 1-year-old, okay? These are the types of patients, age gaps you get for type 1 diabetes. These patients tend to require insulin from the get-go because their body is producing less than 10% of insulin, okay? So that's what we call absolute insulin deficiency. Then you have the larger category, which is 90% of the total diabetes population in the world. Type 1 just forms about 10%. So type 2 diabetes forms about 90% of all the diabetes in the world. And it's found in a much larger population, in a much older population. So your 50-year-old, 40-year-old patient, okay? They tend to be obese, and they tend to have a strong family history. So if your dad has diabetes or your mom has diabetes, then you have an increased chance of developing diabetes. Now, for type 2 diabetes, the pancreas produces around less than 50% of insulin. So you have some little circulating insulin, but not enough to cater for your needs, your body needs. So these patients usually are started on what we call orals, which are tablets, okay? But for type 1 diabetes, it's insulin straight away.
So many cases of diabetes we see goes undiagnosed. Why do you think this is the case even when some people know they are pro-diabetic?
I think overall patient education is still lacking, as much as in recent times there's more talk about diabetes. The other thing is, since its care and management is highly associated with lifestyle, meaning what you eat and exercise, then there's a lot of stigma behind it. Okay? The third thing is the fear of complications. So before, if your sugars are high and, for example, you're not attaining control, you'd have healthcare professionals probably using words like, if you don't do this and this, we're going to put you on insulin. So there's a lot of scare, or if you don't do this and this, you're going to get an amputation, for example. There's a lot of worry about and fear about complications. So even if they know, oh, my dad has diabetes, my risk goes up by 50%.
Yes.
Let me not check my sugar. What if it's high? What will happen if it's high?
Can diabetes be cured or reversed?
There is no cure for diabetes. Diabetes is a progressive illness, and unless you're on medication, we are not able, you won't be able to maintain normal blood glucose control. Okay? Your body is not giving you enough insulin. So either we give you drugs that will make the little insulin work better, or if the insulin is very, very little, replace your insulin with external insulin through a pen. Okay? Now, is it reversible? Yes and no.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. We can reverse diabetes in severely obese patients who go for bariatric surgery, for example. There are cases where reversal has happened. But which patient is what's important. If I'm sending a patient for bariatric surgery, okay, and you're already at, let's say, 1% of pancreatic function, I might not be able to reverse your diabetes. What I might be able to do is reduce the burden of medication. Okay? So patients need to understand it's not, oh, everybody who goes through bariatric surgery will reverse diabetes.
And while still on the same topic, how about gestational diabetes? Can you reverse that?
What people need to understand is GDM, which is gestational diabetes, is basically, you need to understand, first, you had no diabetes when you developed pregnancy. When you conceived, you had no diabetes. Then you have erratic sugars once you've already conceived, due to many reasons, okay? A majority of patients actually reverse 6 weeks post-delivery, okay? And then a small percentage continue to develop type 2 diabetes. What they need to understand, though, even if your diabetes reverses, your risk of developing type 2 diabetes later in life goes up purely by the fact that you got GDM. Okay. So you always need to be, once in a while checking your sugars. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the medication part. People would ask, do I always have to be on medication? Yes, you've touched on the fact there's some that are heavily reliant on insulin. Are there some that you only need medication when, I don't know, the sugar hits the roof?
No, you need to take your medication all the time. I always tell my patients, we don't run around after glucose control. You don't wait till your sugar is high, then try to manage it. Because every second that sugar is high, it's affecting your blood vessels, which increases your risk of complication. A per second sugar is very important, not just what we call your 3-monthly average, the HbA1c. The medication is supposed to prevent the glucose to go up. You don't take it once the glucose is already up. If you don't have diabetes, your body is maintained perfectly between 4 and 7.8 millimoles per liter of blood glucose. So for patients with diabetes, we tell them between 4 to about 10 millimoles per liter after eating. And we need to maintain that normal homeostasis for very good control of glucose and reduction of complications of diabetes. You don't wait till your body is in chaos, then you treat. That's running around after. That's being reactive. Okay. We need to be proactive.
All right, so I guess the ones who would be asking these questions are the ones who believe they can use diet to control their sugars.
Well, even if you're on insulin, diet never changes. You have to follow a proper healthy diet to maintain good glucose control. Being on insulin is not leeway to eat whatever you want. Or being on drugs is not leeway to eat whatever you want. You can't just be on diet alone, then medication alone. No, it's diet plus medication.
Is it a must when somebody has obesity, the probability of diabetes following is the case?
people need to understand the word risk. Risk factor does not mean you have to get diabetes, but almost all the research in type 2 diabetes is associated with an increased risk in weight, an increased weight gain. So when your weight keeps increasing exponentially, your risk of diabetes increases with it. It doesn't mean you have to develop diabetes. It just means your risk is higher. Obesity and weight gain is not just about diabetes. It has a lot to do with other health issues such as cardiovascular diseases, which are one of the leading causes of death in the world, okay? So these lifestyle diseases like high cholesterol levels, heart attacks, strokes, all these are associated with being overweight and obese. It's not just diabetes.
Okay, now when we come back, Dr. Salwa will be telling us, is there really a special diet for diabetics? When we come back, stay with us. Welcome back. Our conversation today is the prevention and management of diabetes. I still have Dr. Salwa Shahbal, who is a diabetologist and, of course, from the Diabetes Management Center. Thank you for joining us. Now, there is a persistent question. Is there a special diet for diabetics?
There is no special diet. The only thing we tell you to avoid is sugar. Simple sugar, the one you put in your tea, okay? And we make you understand why simple sugar is not good for you. For example, if I tell you you're allowed about 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrate per meal, and I tell you 1 little teaspoon is 5 grams, it's taking away from your meal, would you rather have a piece of ngwashe, or would you rather have the sugar?
Okay.
You get my point?
The
Common
wise one
sense.
will choose, the ngwashe.
So you just need to be healthy. And healthy always, these days, what we use in nutrition is the plate model, where half of your plate is vegetables, green leafy vegetables preferably, quarter of your plate is proteins, and a quarter of your plate is your carbohydrates. Now, the trick is in taking complex carbs. And when we're talking about complex carbohydrates, just think of what Shosho used to eat.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of your bread, your white chapati and all that, think of sweet potatoes, cassava, arrowroots, okay? So what they do is complex carbs take time to be digested. So they don't spike your sugars, they raise your sugar levels very slowly. Yeah.
Okay, another thing that's recommended is the use of less salt.
Yes, that's in relation to high blood pressure. So diabetes and high blood pressure is, they're like brothers and sisters, okay? They tend to go hand in hand most of the time, okay? So if you have both, that's a double-edged sword, okay? So we usually tell you minimize on salt, but we tell everybody to minimize on salt. The only people who listen are the ones who already have a problem, unfortunately.
Honey.
Okay.
Is that good or bad?
It's both. Honey is basically simple sugar. Okay, if you take it, if you wake up with a sugar of 16 and you take a teaspoon of honey, your sugars will go up. But if you wake up with a normal sugar and you want to take honey, I don't refuse for my patients to take honey if they're well controlled, and it's a little bit of honey and it's on and off. It's not every day.
All right. Well, we're still talking about this dietary options. Eat more pulses and fish. Would you recommend that?
Yeah, if you can afford fish, yes. Eat more pulses. Definitely pulses. The smaller the grain, the more protein in it, and the more affordable, okay? So always think the bigger the grain, the more carbs in it. So like beans would have more carbs, while dengu will have more protein. So the smaller it is, the healthier it is usually.
Okay, and of course the inclusion of fruits and vegetables.
Yes, what we need to stay away from, all of us, is having a whole bowl of fruit salad. That's too much fructose. You need to give your body nutrition in bits and pieces. The human body was not created to take too much of anything at a go. You're allowed to eat any fruit you want, even if you have diabetes. The only thing is, how much are you taking at one particular go?
All right, so drink sensibly. Would you say stay away from the alcohol or just watch how much you take?
If I bring in religion, I'll tell you stay away from the alcohol. But I have to be open to everybody's lifestyle, okay? And medically, there are limits to how much alcohol you're supposed to take. So for example, what you need to understand is your insulin comes from your pancreas. Too much alcohol intake will damage your pancreas and your liver, which are the two most important organs in management of glucose control. Okay, so I'll give an example for the recommended beer consumption for men, for example. It's 2 beers a day. If you miss Monday to drink your 2 beers, you can't take them on Tuesday. So it's 2 beers a day. For women, it's 1 beer a day. That's recommended. For example, spirits, a man is allowed 2 shots, a woman is allowed 1 shot, such things. So the recommendations are there. In minimal doses, you're allowed to take alcohol, but if you can stop it altogether, the better.
Okay. What are other ways you can recommend if somebody wanted to know if they are within the right sugar range? Like walking into a pharmacy, get the testing?
It's a simple test. Just ask them to do a finger prick. They usually do over-the-counter treatment, self-medicating, yeah? Most Good Life pharmacies offer them. So it takes 2 minutes of your time to just do a blood glucose test. They usually recommend above 40, you have it done at least once a year. I say, considering I see 30-year-olds these days with diabetes, just do it. Anytime you get a chance, just do a blood glucose. It will save you a lot in terms of of complications and medication and things like that for the future. Yeah.
We're living at a time where the foods we're eating do not have all the nutritional elements that we need for our bodies. Would you recommend supplements?
I am one person who, unless you don't need that supplement, for example, you're not a 50-year-old postmenopausal woman, yes, and you live in Kenya, where you can get organic food at the market, go make yourself a proper meal. We don't necessarily need to fall into this bandwagon of the Western system where every young adult is taking a supplement. So if you're basically taking supplements rich in vitamin B12, yet you're a meat eater, okay, you're loading your system with too much vitamin B12, and that has its own complications, okay? So we need to stay away from too much supplements if we are able to eat healthy. Yeah.
We talked about the risk factors, and of course we know about our sedentary lives, eating badly as you're talking about and all that, but I came across something about Africans and Asians are more susceptible to diabetes. How and why?
Diabetes prevalence will go up in low and middle income countries, where most African countries fall in, because of the socioeconomic status. How? It's cheaper to eat ugali and sukuma wiki, which looks healthier, but if you're not eating the whole day for the guy of the mjengo, at night you're going to go and overeat. Then your health-seeking behavior. You're not going to seek medical attention as quickly as somebody who has these facilities at their disposal, okay? Now, when it comes to the Asian community, they're genetically predisposed to have what we call truncal obesity. So they have a higher risk of developing cardiac diseases, heart diseases, and diabetes. Actually, the BMI for the Asian community is lower than our BMI. Theirs, I think, is 23, ours is 24 below. The same reason why patients in Kenya from Central Province have a higher risk of diabetes. One of the reasons could be because the genetic predisposition of fat distribution. So the fat around your tummy, truncal obesity, is directly associated with heart disease and diabetes. And that's why men also have a higher risk of the same.
There are complications associated with diabetes. You touched on some and why there are reasons to why most people would rather not know about their blood sugars, but just touch on some of them so people understand the importance of keeping tabs on your sugar levels.
Diabetes is the leading cause of end-stage renal disease. I can assure you 80% of all these NHIF dialysis centers, 80% of those patients are there because of poor glucose control. So I always say to my fellow nephrologists, isn't it cheaper to prevent diabetes than to pop up dialysis centers? Yeah, but everything is needed, okay? So it's the commonest cause of end-stage renal disease. Diabetes is the commonest cause of reversible blindness in the world. Blindness, which if we pick it early, it can be reversed. The commonest cause of that is diabetes. Okay? Diabetes, the leading cause of death, which is cardiovascular disease, is secondary to diabetes. Okay, all your heart attacks, all your strokes. Every 25 seconds now, it used to be 30, every 25 seconds in the world, somebody is getting an amputation because of diabetes. How long have we sat here?
Yeah, a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of legs that's been amputated because of poor diabetes control. Okay? So it affects everything. And treating a complication of diabetes is more expensive to you, to the community, to the economy of this country, compared to preventing diabetes, okay, and eating healthy. So we need to focus on prevention of diabetes, and if we miss that, if we miss the boat, once you already have diabetes, it's very important to go for follow-up and take your medications, monitor your blood glucose. It's always cheaper than being told, oh, now you need dialysis, considering one session is about 8,000 shillings.
And yet the test would cost you how much?
For a patient who doesn't have the machine, in any pharmacy, you can get it at 100 shillings, for example. I'm sure there are pharmacies that do it at 50, wherever, you know, machinani. So if you own your own machine, it costs you 25 shillings to do a test at home. From the cheapest machine you can ever have in the market, 25 shillings. So it's always cheaper to own your own machine if you have diabetes.
Very well said. Dr. Salwa Shabal, she's a diabetologist and of course from the Diabetes Management Center. And as she said, prevention is better than cure. And of course, take your own life in your own hands. And the best way to do that, in as far as diabetes is concerned, keep checking your sugar levels. Well, time now for the health tip.
If you see a sign saying do not dive, please do not dive, because it probably means that the depth of the swimming pool is not adequate for diving. So when you're diving, you want to put your legs together. If you're a beginner, put your legs together and then go down slightly into a squat. Put your hands just in front of your legs and then spring up. And then the first point of entry should be your hands. Your hands go in, then follow your head, and then the rest of your body. And then you want to dive, like you want to get in and out as soon as you get into the water. So dive in, and as soon as your head hits the water, your purpose is to exit or break the surface of the water. So don't just dive deep down and then go all the way down into the tiles. That could be dangerous. So, and if you're not confident in your diving, please don't dive. Just get into the water, either use the ladder, jump in, or walk into the swimming pool nicely, because it can be a hazard.
It has been Health Diary. Thank you for your company and thank you for your suggestions and comments coming through on our social media handles. My name is Gladys Gashanja and we've been coming to you from the brand new outlet of Good Life Pharmacy here at the Sarit Center on the New Wing. Well, it's time to say adios till next time.
So where was I? And I tell you 1 teaspoon of sugar is 5 grams. So would you rather?
Are you kidding me?
Sema kwenyu kabisa. Unafikiri iko kwenyu.
I know, I've been so cautious of entering there.